Imagine being the only species in the galaxy that breathes poison for breakfast, treats radiation like a spa day, and considers what others call certain death just another Tuesday. When humanity finally reaches the stars, aliens don't fear our weapons, our technology, or even our stubborn refusal to follow galactic law. They fear our lungs. What happens when the most fragile species in the universe turns out to be biologically impossible? When every breath you take could kill a room full of spacefaring civilizations? When your morning jog produces enough toxic waste to power a starship? Welcome to the galaxy's most terrifying revelation: humans aren't the underdogs. We're the walking, talking, breathing apocalypse that somehow learned to smile and shake hands. And we've been doing it so casually, we never even noticed. The universe is about to learn that when humans say take a deep breath and relax, it's not advice. It's a threat. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped through the airlock of the Galactic Research Station Harmony, her breathing apparatus clicking softly with each inhale. Around her, the station buzzed with activity as dozens of alien species worked together in what was supposed to be the greatest scientific collaboration in known history. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was the only one who needed life support equipment just to exist in what everyone else considered a perfectly normal environment. The Zephyrians floated past her on gossamer wings, their translucent bodies shimmering like soap bubbles. The crystalline vortex clicked and chimed as they moved, their geometric forms refracting the station's artificial light into rainbow patterns across the walls. Even the massive Krulon, with their thick, armored hides, moved freely through the corridors without any protective gear. Sarah was the alien here, even though technically, from her perspective, everyone else was. Dr. Chen, came a melodious voice from behind her. She turned to see ZYX4471, a melodian whose bioluminescent patterns pulsed in greeting. The melodians communicated through both sound and light, creating a beautiful symphony whenever they spoke. We are most curious about your research proposal. The translation matrices suggest you wish to study breathing? Sarah smiled behind her face mask. Not just breathing, ZYX. I want to study why humans are the only species that requires environmental controls on every single space station, planet, and ship we visit. Don't you find that odd? The melodian's light patterns shifted to what Sarah had learned indicated confusion. Odd? Your species is simply delicate. This is not unusual. Many species have specific environmental requirements. But not like this, Sarah said, pulling up her datapad. I'd been researching for months. Every other species in the Galactic Alliance shares at least some environmental compatibility with others. Zephyrians can survive in vortex atmospheres for short periods. Krulon can adapt to most planetary conditions. The Helix Collective can literally reshape their biology to match new environments. She paused, looking around at the bustling corridor. But humans? We can't survive anywhere without artificial support. Not one single natural environment in the known galaxy is compatible with human biology. Doesn't that strike anyone else as statistically impossible? ZYX 4471's patterns dimmed thoughtfully. Perhaps your species evolved in an unusually hostile environment? That's what I thought too, until I started looking at the data differently. Sarah's eyes gleamed with the excitement of a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. What if we're not the delicate ones? What if we're the dangerous ones? Before the melodian could respond, an alarm began blaring through the station. The light shifted to emergency orange, and automated voices announced in 17 different languages, environmental breach in laboratory section C. All personnel evacuate immediately. Toxic atmosphere detected. Sarah's blood ran cold. Laboratory section C was where she'd been working on her atmospheric analysis project. More importantly, it was where she'd accidentally broken a small vial of Earth's atmospheric sample the day before. She'd cleaned it up quickly, not thinking much of it. After all, it was just air from home. That's my lab, she said, starting to run toward the affected section. ZYX 4471's bioluminescent patterns flashed in alarm patterns as they followed. When they arrived at the security cordon, chaos reigned. Medical teams were rushing Zephyrian researchers into isolation chambers, their gossamer wings blackened and withering. A Vortex scientist was being carefully transported in a crystalline medical container, their normally perfect geometric form cracked and clouded. Even a Krulon researcher, known for their incredible durability, was being treated for what the medical displays indicated was severe chemical burns to their respiratory system. Security Chief Grex Null, a towering Helix Collective member whose form currently resembled a cross between a tree and a spider, spotted Sarah approaching.
Dr. Chen, were you working with hazardous materials in that laboratory? I don't understand. All I had was atmospheric samples from various planets for my research. Nothing dangerous.
Something is very dangerous, Grex Null said grimly. We have 14 researchers in critical condition. The atmosphere in that lab registered toxicity levels that should be impossible. Our instruments detected concentrations of oxygen that would be lethal to most known life forms, plus trace amounts of other compounds that are apparently highly corrosive. Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place in her mind, but the picture they formed was so impossible she could barely process it.
Chief, what exactly is oxygen toxic to? What kind of question is that? Oxygen is one of the most dangerous substances in the galaxy.
It's incredibly reactive, causes rapid cellular breakdown, and is fatal to virtually all known life forms in concentrations above 0.1%. Most planets that have significant oxygen in their atmosphere are classified as death worlds, completely uninhabitable. The melodeon beside her flickered in what Sarah now recognized as extreme agitation. Dr. Chen, your atmospheric readings from your home planet, they showed oxygen levels of over 20%.
We assumed there was an error in the data. Sarah's mind reeled. But, oxygen is what we breathe. We need it to live.
The silence that followed her statement was deafening. Every alien in earshot turned to stare at her, their various forms of expression all indicating the same thing: horror.
You breathe oxygen? Security Chief Grex Null's form began shifting rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in the Helix Collective. Willingly? Not just willingly. We require it. We die without it. Sarah was beginning to understand why she needed environmental suits everywhere she went. What do you all breathe? Safe gases, ZYX4471 whispered, their light patterns now a dim, fearful blue. Inert compounds. Noble gases mixed with safe organics. Nothing reactive. Nothing that could burn us from the inside. Dr. Caithmore, a renowned xenobiologist from the crystalline Vortex species, approached carefully. Even through their environmental suit, Sarah could see the way their geometric form was trembling. Dr. Chen, if I may ask, what other substances does your species regularly consume? Sarah was beginning to feel like she was in some sort of cosmic horror story. Well, water, obviously. Food. We eat plants and animals from our planet.
Water, Dr. Caithmore repeated faintly. The universal solvent.
One of the most corrosive substances known to science. And you consume other life forms?
This from a Zephyrian medic who had just emerged from treating the injured researchers.
You mean, you intake the biological matter of other organisms? Directly into your digestive systems? Yes? Sarah was starting to feel very uncomfortable. Don't you?
Absolutely not, the Zephyrian's gossamer wings fluttered in agitation.
We photosynthesize. We absorb energy directly from light sources and electromagnetic fields. The idea of putting other biological matter inside our bodies is. The translator struggled for a moment before settling on horrifying. Dr. Caithmore was rapidly accessing data on their crystalline interface.
Dr. Chen, our records show that your planet has an atmospheric composition that includes not just oxygen, but nitrogen compounds, carbon dioxide, and trace amounts of argon and other noble gases.
The atmospheric pressure is nearly 15 times what most species consider safe.
The temperature ranges would be lethal to 78% of known species.
And yet you're saying your species not only survives in this environment, but requires it? That's exactly what I'm saying.
Sarah looked around at the crowd of aliens that had gathered, all maintaining what she now realized was a safe distance from her.
But that's not even the strangest part. There's more?
Grexnell's form had stabilized into something resembling a defensive barrier. Sarah pulled up her research data.
I've been analyzing the biological requirements of every species in the Alliance. Do you know what I found? Every single species has environmental needs that overlap with at least 3 other species. Every species except humans. We can't share environments with anyone. But, more than that, our ideal environment is lethal to everyone else.
She paused, looking at the data that had been puzzling her for months. But, here's what's really strange.
Humans aren't just surviving in what you consider a toxic death world. We're thriving.
We've spread across our entire planet, adapted to every climate zone, every altitude, every condition our world can throw at us.
We've even started terraforming other planets to match our toxic environment.
The crowd of aliens had grown larger, but also moved further away. Sarah noticed that several security personnel had quietly positioned themselves between her and the civilian researchers.
There's more, she continued, her scientist's excitement overriding her growing awareness of how the aliens were reacting to her.
I started looking at human biology compared to other species.
Did you know that human blood is acidic enough to burn through most known organic materials? That our digestive systems produce compounds that would be classified as industrial solvents on most worlds?
A small Pishian researcher, barely the size of Sarah's thumb, spoke up from a safe perch on a Krulon's shoulder.
Dr. Chen, are you saying that humans are walking chemical weapons? Sarah blinked. What? No. We're just normal. We're just living our lives.
Dr. Chen, Dr. Caithmore said carefully, when you exercise, as you call it, what happens to your body? Well, we sweat, our heart rate increases, we breathe harder, our body temperature rises.
You secrete liquid through your skin?
Yes, to cool down.
And, this liquid, what is its composition? Sarah was getting a very bad feeling about where this was going. It's mostly water, with some salt and trace organic compounds. Nothing unusual.
The silence stretched on for a very long time.
Finally, Grexnell spoke. Dr. Chen, I think we need to have a much longer conversation about human biology.
And, I think we need to have it while you're in a completely sealed environmental suit. As Sarah looked around at the dozens of aliens staring at her with what she was beginning to realize was barely controlled terror, she had the sudden realization that her research project was about to become much more important than she'd ever imagined. And, much more dangerous.
The question was no longer why humans needed environmental protection everywhere they went in the galaxy.
The question was why the galaxy needed protection from humans. 3 days later, Sarah found herself in the most secure conference room on Harmony Station, surrounded by what amounted to the galaxy's leading experts on xenobiology, atmospheric sciences, and hazardous materials management. The irony that she was the hazardous material in question wasn't lost on her. The room itself had been specially modified for this meeting. Sarah sat alone in a sealed transparent chamber at one end, with her own atmospheric controls and waste management systems. The rest of the attendees were arranged in a semicircle at what appeared to be a very safe distance, each in their own environmental protection suitable for dealing with what the official meeting notes tactfully called extreme biological hazards.
Admiral Tyx Vorin of the Melodian Defense Corps was the first to speak, their bioluminescent patterns a carefully controlled neutral white. Dr. Chen, we've spent the last 72 hours analyzing the data you provided about human biology. We've also conducted our own research using the Galactic Archive's biological databases.
What we've discovered is concerning. Dr. Caithmore activated their holographic display, showing a three-dimensional model of human anatomy.
Let us start with your cardiovascular system.
You mentioned that during physical exertion, your heart rate increases and you breathe more rapidly.
Can you explain what you mean by heart rate? Sarah frowned at the question.
Your heart pumps blood through your body.
The heart rate is how many times per minute it beats. A normal resting rate for humans is around 60 to 100 beats per minute.
During exercise, it can go up to 180 or even higher. The hologram zoomed in on the human heart, and Sarah could see several aliens in the audience physically recoil. Dr. Chen, Dr. Caithmore continued, their crystalline form flickering with what Sarah had learned indicated deep distress. You're describing a mechanical pump that forces highly acidic, corrosive fluid through your entire body at incredibly high pressure, and, during stress, this pump increases its force and speed dramatically.
Well, when you put it like that, it sounds worse than it is.
It gets worse, interjected Dr. Sleth, a serpentine naga whose scales had shifted to warning colors.
This fluid you call blood contains iron compounds, correct? Hemoglobin, yes.
It carries oxygen through our bodies.
Dr. Chen, iron is one of the most reactive metals in the galaxy.
Your blood is essentially a solution of reactive metal dissolved in acid, pumped through your body at high pressure, carrying the most dangerous gas known to science. Sarah was beginning to see why this meeting had been classified at the highest security levels.
But, it works fine for us.
We've been using this system for millions of years of evolution.
Admiral Tyx Voron's pattern shifted to what Sarah was learning to recognize as barely controlled panic. Dr. Chen, we've run atmospheric simulations.
If a human were to exercise vigorously in an uncontrolled environment, the amount of water vapor and carbon dioxide you would exhale could create a localized toxic cloud lethal to most species within a 50-meter radius.
That's not possible, Sarah protested. Humans work out together all the time. We have gymnasiums, sports arenas, fitness centers where hundreds of humans exercise simultaneously in the same space.
The silence that followed her statement was profound. Dr. Vexnor, a gelatinous fluvian whose transparent form was now a sickly green color, spoke up.
Dr. Chen, are you saying that hundreds of your species regularly gather in enclosed spaces to deliberately increase their metabolic output, breathing and sweating together? Yes, it's called a gym.
Or sports.
We do it for fun and health. For fun, Dr. Vexnor repeated weakly.
You gather in groups to collectively produce toxic atmospheres, for recreation. Professor Quindat, an elderly Zirian whose multiple eyes were all focused on Sarah with disturbing intensity, leaned forward.
Dr. Chen, let's discuss your planet's ecosystem. You mentioned that humans consume other life forms. Can you describe the process of food preparation? Sarah was really not liking where this was going.
Well, we have agriculture, where we grow plants.
And we raise animals for food. Then, we cook the food, usually by applying heat, and then we eat it.
You apply heat, Professor Quindat said slowly.
What kind of temperatures? Depends on what we're cooking.
Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, so we might boil vegetables or pasta. We might roast meat at 175 to 200 degrees. Sometimes we grill at even higher temperatures.
The professor's multiple eyes blinked in a cascade of disbelief. Dr. Chen, 100 degrees Celsius would vaporize most known biological tissues instantly. 200 degrees would break down molecular bonds in most organic compounds. Are you saying humans regularly expose their food to temperatures that would be used in industrial processes to break down hazardous waste? It's just cooking, Sarah said weakly. And then, you consume this thermally processed matter? Yes. At what temperature? Sarah really didn't want to answer this question. Well, we usually let it cool down a bit first. Maybe to 60 or 70 degrees.
60 degrees, Professor Quindat repeated. Dr. Chen, 60 degrees Celsius would cause severe thermal damage to the internal structures of every species in this room.
You're saying humans regularly consume matter at temperatures that would be lethal to us on contact? But, we also eat cold food. Ice cream, salads, fruit. Dr. Caithmore's holographic display shifted to show temperature ranges. Dr. Chen, what temperature do you consider cold for food? I don't know, maybe around 0 degrees Celsius for ice cream?
0 degrees, Dr. Caithmore said faintly.
The freezing point of water.
You consume the universal solvent in its solid crystalline form. For pleasure. Sarah was beginning to feel like she was describing her species to a room of beings made of tissue paper and powered by candlelight. Look, I know this probably sounds strange to you, but humans are really not that unusual. We're actually pretty fragile compared to some Earth species.
There are other species on your planet? Admiral TYX Voron's patterns had shifted to what Sarah was now quite sure was emergency alert status.
Well, yes.
Millions of species.
We share the planet with all kinds of life.
And they survive in the same toxic environment you do?
Most of them, yes. I mean, we have species that live in even more extreme environments. We have bacteria that live in boiling water, or in highly acidic conditions, or even in radioactive waste. The room fell so quiet that Sarah could hear the hum of the air recycling system in her isolation chamber. Dr. Vexnor was the first to speak, their form now a deep purple color that Sarah suspected was not good.
Dr. Chen, did you say radioactive waste?
Well, yes.
Some extremophile bacteria can actually use radiation as an energy source. And these organisms exist on the same planet as humans?
Yes, though they're mostly in very specific environments.
It's not like we run into them every day.
Professor Quindat activated his own holographic display. Dr. Chen, our analysis of your planet's geological surveys shows significant levels of what we would classify as radioactive materials. Your planet's core generates massive amounts of magnetic radiation, your star bombards the surface with various forms of energy that would be lethal to most species, and yet your biosphere thrives.
Earth is actually pretty typical as planets go, Sarah protested.
I mean, sure, we have some extreme environments, but most of the planet is perfectly habitable.
Dr. Chen, Admiral TYX Voron said carefully, we've been analyzing the data from your homeworld.
Your species has spread to environments that include deserts with temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius, polar regions with temperatures below -40 degrees, mountains with atmospheric pressures less than half of your sea level normal, and underwater environments at crushing pressures.
Yes, humans are pretty adaptable.
Adaptable, Dr. Sleth repeated. Dr. Chen, the temperature range you just described spans nearly 100 degrees. The pressure range spans conditions that would either crush or explosively decompress most known life forms.
You call this adaptable? Sarah was starting to get a sinking feeling. Admiral, what exactly are you getting at?
Admiral TYX Voron's bioluminescent patterns cycled through what Sarah had learned were the Melodian equivalents of taking a deep breath and gathering courage. Dr. Chen, we've been in contact with the Galactic Council's xenobiology experts, their atmospheric specialists, and their planetary classification teams. We've also consulted with the Alliance's military strategists and threat assessment specialists. The Admiral paused, patterns shifting to a formal, official configuration.
Dr.
Chen, based on our analysis, your species doesn't just come from what we would classify as a death world. Your species comes from what we would classify as an apocalypse world. A planet so hostile that it should not be able to support any life at all, let alone a thriving biosphere with millions of species.
Sarah felt her mouth go dry. What are you saying?
We're saying that by every measure we use to classify planets and species, humans should not exist. You survive in conditions that would be instantly lethal to 94% of known sapient species.
You thrive in environments that would require our most advanced hazmat protocols just to study remotely. Professor Quindat leaned forward, all of his eyes focused on Sarah. Dr. Chen, we need to ask you a very important question. Are there more humans? And, if so, are they aware that they are living weapons of mass destruction?
Sarah stared at the assembled aliens, her mind racing.
There are about 8 billion humans on Earth. The silence that followed this statement was the longest yet.
Finally, Dr. Vexnor spoke, their form now shifting through colors Sarah had never seen before.
8 billion?
Yes.
And we've started colonizing other planets. We're terraforming them to be more like Earth.
Terraforming them, Admiral TYX Voron repeated slowly.
You're spreading your toxic environment to other worlds?
Well, yes, so humans can live there. Dr. Chen, Admiral TYX Voron said, their patterns now cycling rapidly through what Sarah was absolutely certain was panic. I think we need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. And I think we need to classify this information at the highest possible security level. Sarah looked around at the room full of terrified aliens and realized that her simple research project into atmospheric compatibility had just become the most important diplomatic crisis in galactic history. And she was pretty sure it was about to get much worse. 2 weeks after what had become known as the Chin Revelation, Sarah found herself in the most surreal situation of her life. She was sitting in the Galactic Council's emergency assembly chamber, still in her isolation suit, while representatives from 347 different species debated whether humanity represented an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. The emergency session had been called after Dr. Chen's research findings had been verified by 17 different independent scientific teams across the galaxy. Each verification had only made this situation more alarming. High Counselor Zenth Prime, an ancient being whose crystalline form had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, called for order. Their voice resonated through the translation matrices in frequencies that made most of the assembled delegates' hearing organs ache. We are here to address what our xenobiology experts have termed the human paradox. Dr. Sarah Chen, representing the species in question, will present her findings, followed by testimony from our scientific advisory board. Sarah stood in her transparent isolation booth, looking out at hundreds of alien faces, energy patterns, geometric forms, and biological configurations that represented the greatest gathering of sapient species in galactic history. All of them were staring at her like she might explode at any moment. Honored counselors, Sarah began, I want to start by saying that humans have no intention of threatening anyone. We came to the galaxy seeking friendship, knowledge, and peaceful cooperation. A ripple of what the translators interpreted as nervous laughter went through the assembly. Dr. Chen, interrupted Delegate Vashkol of the Helix Collective, our analysts have been studying your species' historical records. Would you care to explain what you call extreme sports? Sarah's heart sank. Extreme sports are recreational activities that involve a higher degree of risk than normal. Risk, Delegate Vashkol repeated. Dr. Chen, we have video records of humans deliberately jumping from aircraft at high altitude, underwater diving to crushing depths, climbing vertical rock faces without safety equipment, and deliberately exposing themselves to avalanche conditions while strapped to pieces of wood. Those are just hobbies, Sarah protested weakly. Dr. Chen, called out Counselor Mexdeath of the Thermal Collective, we've analyzed your species' idea of vacation destinations. You have locations where humans pay to be deliberately exposed to intense solar radiation, extreme temperatures, and dangerous wildlife. You call this relaxation. Some people like adventure tourism, Sarah said, though she was beginning to see how this looked to species that considered a 5-degree temperature change to be an extreme environmental hazard. High Counselor Zenth Prime activated the chamber's main display, showing a holographic representation of Earth. Dr. Chen, our geological surveys of your homeworld have revealed something unprecedented. Your planet is tectonically active to a degree that should make it uninhabitable. You have volcanic systems that regularly emit gases that would clear entire sectors of our space stations. You have weather systems that generate electrical discharges powerful enough to disable our most advanced starships. The hologram zoomed in on various parts of Earth, showing hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, and lightning storms. And, yet, our observations show that humans deliberately travel into these phenomena. You have occupations where humans study active volcanoes, chase storms, and work in conditions that our hazmat protocols classify as unsurvivable. Those are important scientific and emergency response jobs, Sarah said, though her voice was getting smaller with each revelation. Dr. Caithmore stepped forward, their crystalline form now reinforced with what appeared to be additional protective barriers. Dr. Chen, we need to discuss human reproduction. Sarah really didn't like where this was going. Our biological analysis indicates that human offspring are born in a highly underdeveloped state and require years of care. However, they are also apparently capable of surviving the same toxic environment as adult humans from birth. Is this correct? Well, yes. Human babies are born breathing air, just like adults. Dr. Chen, Dr. Caithmore continued, are you saying that newly born humans can survive exposure to oxygen concentrations that would be lethal to most of us? Without any protective equipment or gradual acclimatization? Yes, that's normal for us. A wave of what could only be described as horror rippled through the assembly. Delegate Slorth of the Naga Confederation raised herself up, her scales now a deep warning red.
Dr. Chen, our analysts have also been studying human cultural records.
We've discovered something called contact sports. Sarah closed her eyes.
Yes, some humans engage in athletic competitions that involve physical contact.
Dr. Chen, we have recordings of humans deliberately colliding with each other at high speed, striking each other with their limbs, and apparently competing to see who can cause the most physical damage to their opponents. And then, after these violent encounters, they appear to socialize together in a friendly manner.
It's just football, boxing, martial arts, Sarah said. It's competition, not actual violence. Competition, Delegate Slorth repeated. Dr. Chen, what you call competition would be classified as assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm by every legal system in the galaxy.
Professor Quindat activated his own display, showing human dietary habits.
Dr. Chen, we need to discuss human food consumption patterns. Our analysis shows that humans regularly consume what we would classify as industrial chemicals. What do you mean?
Capsaicin, for example. The compound that makes your spicy foods spicy.
It's a neurotoxin that most species would classify as a chemical weapon. Humans consume it recreationally and describe the experience as enjoyable.
Sarah thought about her last Thai food dinner and winced.
It's just flavor.
Flavor, Professor Quindat repeated. Dr. Chen, you're describing the recreational consumption of compounds that would require hazmat protocols to handle safely. But that's not even the most concerning part, added Dr. Vexnor, their gelatinous form now a deep, alarmed purple.
Dr. Chen, humans also consume ethanol. Deliberately.
In social situations.
You mean alcohol?
That's just social drinking. Social drinking, Dr. Vexnor said slowly.
Dr. Chen, ethanol is a solvent. It breaks down biological tissues. Most species would use it to sterilize equipment or dissolve organic waste.
You consume it as a recreational drug and describe the resulting neurological impairment as fun.
High Counselor Zenth Prime called for order as agitated chatter broke out across the assembly. Dr. Chen, we have one final area of inquiry.
Our military analysts have been studying human conflict resolution.
Sarah's heart stopped. Our what? Throughout your recorded history, humans have engaged in what you call warfare. Dr. Chen, the weapons your species has developed are unlike anything we've seen in the galaxy.
Not because they're particularly advanced, but because they're designed by and for a species that considers exposure to lethal toxins and extreme physical trauma to be acceptable risks.
The display showed images from human military history.
Your species has developed weapons that generate temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius, explosives that create pressures that would liquefy most known biological tissues, and chemical agents that exploit biological vulnerabilities that most species don't even have because they would never survive in environments where such vulnerabilities could be exploited.
Sarah stared at the images of tanks, aircraft, and various weapons systems.
Seen through the lens of what she now understood about galactic biology, human military technology looked like something designed by and for creatures that were already living in hell. Dr. Chen, High Counselor Zenth Prime continued, our most concerning discovery is that humans have developed weapons that work by creating the environmental conditions that humans consider normal. Your flamethrowers create temperatures that are within your species' survival range.
Your chemical weapons often use compounds that naturally occur in your biosphere.
But we don't use those things anymore, Sarah protested. We have international laws against chemical weapons.
Dr.
Chen, interrupted Admiral Tyx Voring, you have international laws against chemical weapons because your species is so naturally dangerous that you had to create rules to prevent yourselves from accidentally exterminating each other. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. High Counselor Zenth Prime stood, their ancient crystalline form reflecting the chamber's lights in patterns that spoke of deep contemplation. Dr. Chen, the Galactic Council faces an unprecedented situation. Your species does not fit any known category of sapient life.
You are not merely apex predators, predators we understand. You are not simply from a hostile environment, we have protocols for that.
The High Counselor paused, gathering the attention of every being in the chamber. You are biological impossibilities who somehow exist, thrive, and have developed technology and culture despite living in conditions that should prevent the development of complex life entirely. You are, by every measure we can apply, living weapons of mass destruction who have developed art, music, philosophy, and, apparently, a sincere desire for peaceful cooperation with the galaxy. Sarah looked around at the hundreds of alien faces, all focused on her with expressions she was learning to read as fear, fascination, and something that might have been respect.
The question before us, High Counselor Zentprime continued, is not whether humans are dangerous.
Clearly, you are the most dangerous species ever encountered.
The question is whether you are dangerous to us.
Sarah took a deep breath of her carefully controlled atmosphere and made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Honored counselors, she said, I propose a different question.
We've established that humans are dangerous by your standards.
We've established that we come from what you consider an apocalypse world. We've established that our biology, our culture, our technology, and our very existence shouldn't be possible. She paused, looking around the chamber. But here's what we haven't discussed. Humans have been studying your species, your worlds, your cultures for months now.
We've been learning your languages, your customs, your needs. We've been trying to figure out how to be good neighbors in the galaxy. Sarah activated her own display, showing the research she'd been conducting alongside her atmospheric studies. Did you know that Zephyrian wingsong becomes more complex and beautiful in low-gravity environments? Did you know that Vortex crystal formations can be enhanced using specific electromagnetic frequencies that humans can generate? Did you know that Melodian bioluminescence can be used to create art forms that no other species in the galaxy can even perceive, but humans can learn to appreciate? The chamber had fallen completely silent. You're looking at humans as walking disasters, and maybe we are. But we're also problem solvers. We're adapters. We're survivors who figured out how to thrive in impossible conditions. Sarah's voice grew stronger. And now we want to use those abilities to help you thrive too.
She looked directly at High Counselor Zentprime.
You said we're biological impossibilities.
You're right.
We are.
But impossibilities don't follow the normal rules.
Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Sarah smiled, though she knew most of the delegates couldn't see it through her environmental suit. Honored counselors, humans aren't asking for permission to exist in your galaxy.
We're asking for the chance to prove that the most dangerous species you've ever encountered can also be the most useful ally you've ever had.
The question isn't whether humans are safe to have in the galaxy, Sarah concluded. The question is whether the galaxy can afford not to have us.
As the assembly erupted into debate, discussion, and what appeared to be several different forms of excited communication, Sarah realized that her simple research project had indeed changed the galaxy. But maybe, just maybe, it had changed it for the better.
After all, someone had to be the galaxy's emergency response team. And humans were very, very good in emergencies.